For section 7.2, this is the distributive property. Those of you that were in my class semester 1, we did cover this a little bit, but we're going to go over it again just so we're extra good at it when you get to algebra next year. So for the distributive property, we talked about that in our little flip book, and that is where if you have a value multiplied by a group of numbers, let's do a different one, let's do 3 and 4. That is the same as multiplying that value on the outside by each individual term. So what that would look like is 2 times 3 plus 2 times 4. And that would be the distributive property. So we're taking this value on the outside and we're distributing it or multiplying it by all of the parts that are in the group. So if we look at our example down below, we're going to take 15 times 2 plus 30. So 15 times 2 is 30 plus, and then we're going to take 15 times 30. So 15 times 3 would be 45, and then we're going to add that 0 on at the end. After we distribute like that, then we can just add those two values together. So 30 plus 450 would be 480. And that would be our answer. And as you're watching the video, make sure you go and write it down on the note sheet. All right. Example B here is the same type of thing, just the value that's on the outside is on the right side, but you're still going to distribute it to both parts. So we're going to take negative 8 times 4. And a negative times a positive is a negative answer. 8 times 4 is 32. Then we're going to do the same thing, negative 8, and we want to be careful that we're looking at the sign in front of the number. So this is negative 8 times negative 11, which will make it positive. And then 8 times 11 is 88. Okay, so we have 88 plus a negative 32, or negative 32 plus 88. One is positive and one is negative. If we look, there are more positive numbers, so that means our answer is going to be positive. And we're just going to subtract. So 88 minus 32 is going to be 56. So our final answer is positive 56. And while you're doing this, if you want to use a calculator, that is okay to help you with the multiplication. While you're doing it though, you have to show your work. So you are going to get credit for showing your work, but you can use a calculator to help the multiplying and the adding and subtracting. That is okay. All right, our next one. Example 2 says use the distributive property to evaluate the expression using mental math. So we have 312 times negative 4. So I'm going to take this negative 4 and put it up front. And then in the parentheses, we are going to break up 312 into each place value. So the 3 represents 300. The 1 represents 10. And then the 2 just represents 2. So by breaking it up, it's going to make it easier for us to multiply without having to use a calculator. So if we take negative 4 times positive 300, that's going to be a negative. 4 times 3 is 12, and then we add those 2 zeros at the end. And if we do that again, negative 4 times a positive 10 is going to be a negative. 4 times 10 would be 40. And lastly, negative 4 times a positive 2 would be a negative number. 4 times 2 would be 8. So by breaking up the number and using the distributive property, we're able to break it up into numbers that are easily multiplied without using a calculator. All of these numbers are negatives, so because it's negative 1,200, negative 40, and negative 8, to get our total, we are adding them all together. We're trying to find the total negatives that we have. So we would have 1,248. That is negative. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and do the next one, part B. So we have -5, and we're going to be multiplying that by 191. So we're going to break it up again into the hundreds place, and then the tens place, and then the ones. Once we have that, then we are able to distribute or multiply. So -5 times positive 100 is going to be -500. And -5 times a positive 90 is negative. 5 times 9 is 45. And then we add the 0. And lastly, we're going to take -5 times a positive 1, which will be a negative. And 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so just like last time, we want to figure out what our total is. All of these are negatives, so we want the total amount of negatives we have. So we're going to add them all together. So if we look, the total number of hundreds we have is 500 and 400. So we're going to have -900. And then we have our tens, which is just a 50. And then our ones, which would be a -5. And that gives us our final answer of -955. All right, so go ahead and try the next one on your own. And then, so pause the video, try that one, and then hit play so that you can check your answer. Okay, so hopefully you have your answer. So you should have taken -7 times 80 plus 2. And then this -7 would be multiplied by 80. Negative times a positive would be negative. 7 times 8 is 56, and then we add the 0. Then we would take that -7 times a positive 2. A negative times a positive is negative, and 7 times 2 is 14. So by doing this, we broke up the number and we were able to multiply mentally. So at this, we have -560 minus 14. They're both negative, so we want to find the total amount of negatives. So we would have -574. So if your answer wasn't right that you did on your own, just go ahead and fix that before you move on to the next problem. All right, so this is the distributive property with numbers. If we go down to number 3, we are going to do distributive property with some variables. And with this one, there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can use an area model, or you can just do the multiplication like we were doing above. So we're going to go over what an area model looks like so that you can use that if it is helpful for you. So what an area model is you are going to make 2 boxes, and these numbers, so the individual number 11 would go on the left side, and then each term would go in on top of its own box. And area models would be finding the area. And to find the area of a square, you take the length times the width. So in this case, we would take 11 times s. And when you take a number times a variable, 11 times s, it is just 11s. Then we're going to take 11 times 9. And 11 times 9 would be 99. So then anything that's inside these 2 boxes, that would be your answer. So our answer is going to be 11s, and the 99 was positive, so we would put plus 99. And that would be your final answer. So if it's helpful to break it up like this, where you draw the boxes and then do the multiplication, you can do that. All right, let's do our next one. So our next one, we have negative 20 times x minus 7. So let's add our boxes. The negative 20 goes off on the side. And then our two terms would go on the top. So we would have x and a minus 7. It's important that you do not forget this negative, otherwise that's going to change your answer. So then just like last time, we're going to take negative 20 times x, and that'll be negative 20x. And then we're going to take negative 20 times negative 7. So both of those negatives are going to make a positive number. And 2 times 7 is 14. And then we're going to add that 0 from the 20. And that will give us the answer of negative 20x plus 140. And this is your final answer there. So what we just did there is we found equivalent expressions. And equivalent expressions is when two variable expressions, or equivalent expressions are two variable expressions with the same value once they are simplified. So if we look, 11 times s plus 9, that is equivalent to 11s plus 99 because all we did was distribute and simplify. So those expressions are still equal to each other. They are just written in different ways or different formats. So we are going to use the distributive property again here to find equivalent expressions. So if you would like to continue to use the area model like we did above, you can do that. If you don't like that, it's too much work for you, then you can use the arrows. So with this, we're going to take negative 8, and we're going to use an arrow and point it to our first term that we're going to multiply that by. So we're going to take negative 8 times 17. And it is okay to use a calculator, so if you don't know that off the top of your head, you can just grab a calculator really quick and type that in. The important thing is that when you're using a calculator, you still have to show your steps. So we would draw that arrow. Oh, I put plus instead of times. So negative 8 times a positive 17 is going to be negative 136. Then we're going to take that same negative 8 and multiply it by a positive b. A negative times a positive is negative. And when you take a number times a letter or a variable, you just put them right next to each other. So negative 8b. And that is our final answer. So you can either use the arrows to show what you are multiplying, or you can use the area model like we did on the previous problems, whichever works best for you. Okay. So then if we do this again with part B, with this one, we have decimals. We still approach the problem the exact same way. The only thing that's different is that the numbers have decimals with them. So we're going to take this 3.25 and we're going to multiply it by 5.02. Oops. So if we do 3.25 times 5.02, that gives us a number of 16.315. Then we're going to take that 3.25 and we're going to still multiply that by negative t. A positive times a negative is negative. And 3.25 t would be our final term. There you go. So that's what the distributive property would look like. So next, what you are going to do, you are going to finish up the independent practice.